Hey guys, Justin here from CBI Off-Road. Today we are working on a 2021 Chevy Colorado ZR2. We're going to show you how to install our front covert bumper. Stay tuned. Alright, so first step, we're underneath the vehicle. We're going to remove the skid plate. It's held on by four 15mm bolts, and then the next step is we're going to remove these T15 bolts on each side. There's 5 on each side. So once we get this one, the skid plate out of the way, you'll be able to access this 5th bolt over here. So we'll do that first. All right, so now we're going to talk about the cut. We're going to follow these factory lines here, so it's going to be really simple to identify. We'll go ahead and draw it out with the Sharpie and get you a close-up shot so you can see. Up here, I'm going to start out probably with the air saw. You can kind of reach in here, and then once I get out here, I'll transition to our cutoff wheel. Always cut, you know, on the discard side of the line so that you can stand up to the line nice and evenly. You don't want to get too greedy on your first cut and take off too much material. So I'll draw this out. Like I said, we're going to kind of make an initial cut. We'll do a little sanding, and then we'll get in here to tighten it up a little bit. But enough talking, we'll show you where this is at. All right, so we got the initial cut done. We're going to take a break from the cutting and start taking off some of these components that we're not going to need. We're going to get rid of this little shield here. This is a 15mm bolt on the bottom on each side. We're going to get rid of these tow hooks. There's two 17mm on each side. And then working our way up this metal crash bar, there's two 15mm bolts on each side. We'll go ahead and get all that out of the way now. All right, so we made us some room in here. Now we're gonna go back to cutting. We're gonna cut out these little vertical pieces all the way along the bottom of the grill, and then we're just gonna kind of go straight across to get this plastic piece out. It's kind of easier to access it from the underside, so that cut we'll do this way, but our vertical pieces we'll be able to get right in this way. All right, so now we got that piece out of the way. This next plastic piece, we're gonna go ahead and remove it. We can take a long screwdriver, kind of reach up behind these pins and just pry this off. We'll be breaking those pins, but we're not gonna reinstall this, so it's not a big deal. So just be careful of this sensor right here, and obviously this grill surface here, we don't wanna damage that. But just slide your screwdriver up there and just pry straight out and those will break off. Okay, so moving on, we're still in demolition mode right now. We're gonna pop these little plastic pieces out. There's just some tabs holding it in at the bottom and the sides. So once we pop these out, this will identify an area that we're gonna cut next. So I'll show you that once we get this out. Okay, so we're gonna pop this other one out also and take this wiring out and remove this sensor. This is gonna ultimately be relocated up further higher in the grill, but we're gonna get this out, fish the wire out so we don't damage it, and we're gonna wanna cut the bottom of this piece. We're gonna cut over here on this side, and then we'll remove this plastic air dam. All right, so our next step is we're gonna remove this plastic piece on each side as well as the support. So down here, there's two more of our T15 Torx bolts, and then up top, there's a 10mm holding it in. So once we get these out on each side, then we'll keep opening up our cut here, getting it finalized. All right, so cut as much as you can out of these side pieces to try to get it flush with our cut. It's really hard to get a cutting tool in there, so just kind of do the best you can, and then get your sander out, and you can take a lot of plastic off pretty quick with this sander. So you can sand flush, and then we'll go ahead and start working our cut all the way down, getting sanded to that line and kind of getting a good finished edge going for that. All right, so now you have a couple options here based on what you're doing. So if you're not running a winch in your bumper, you can throw it up in this configuration right now. If you are running a winch, depending on the type of winch, you may need to do some modifications to this piece right here. You can unbolt it and remove this whole plastic piece. I like to keep these two supports in and just kind of cut this center section up a little higher to keep room, to maintain room for the solenoid of the winch. So based on your configuration, you got a couple options there. What we're gonna do, we have a Smitty build. It's pretty low profile on the solenoid. Is we're gonna leave these bolts in and we're gonna just kind of cut this plastic upward and the center piece out a little bit to allow room for that solenoid. Make sure you push your wiring back out of the way for this temperature sensor. You definitely don't want to damage that. But all that being said, we'll go ahead and start our cuts going up. All right, so we got a notch cut out for our winch solenoid. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna install our included temperature relocation bracket. So this is just gonna use the factory hole that this plastic piece was bolted to. So we'll reuse that hardware, and this sensor, it just simply snaps right into the back. So that'll go into that, and then we'll just bolt it into that factory clip nut. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and prep our bumper for installation. So if you have light bars, winches, accessories, now is definitely the time to do it. And the order to do it is a light bar will go in first and then your winch, just because the light bar tucks in so tight to the front. With the winch, it'd be really hard to get it in. This particular bumper takes a single row 30-inch curved light bar to match the profile of the bumper. And then nested in here, our winch is gonna be a Smitty built 10,000. And we should have enough room for the solenoid to sit right on it. There's no need to relocate this one. So we're gonna install our light bar brackets onto the light bar, and then we'll slide it up here and get everything kind of fit and then tighten down together. All right, so we got our bumper put together, we got our winch, our light bar, and everything in there that we're gonna run. Now it's time to get the bumper on the vehicle. So on our main mounting here, we're gonna use the factory bolts that we removed. And then down here, going through this cross brace, also through the bumper, we're gonna use the included 7/16 by 3-inch bolts. So this is kind of heavy, so make sure you have some help going in. We're gonna kind of cheat and use the lift to just kind of guide this in there and get it started, but definitely a two-person job. So we'll go ahead and get this bolted up. All right, so we got everything tightened down with this bumper. The two inside bolts, they're a 15 millimeter. They're pretty difficult to get to. You can kind of reach through here and make it with a smaller ratchet wrench, or we have a hole cut out here where you can gain access to it. Next, we're gonna install these supports that'll tie in our felt here, inner fender liner, to the bumper. Once we get that, we can kind of trim this out of the way, be pretty close to being finished. right, so we got our bumper done, skid plates up. Now we're gonna show you what to do with this mess. All right, so now we're hooked up to our giant anchor we call the Gray Whale, our good old Tundra. Keegan's letting us use it. So we're gonna take this truck, we're gonna put it in neutral. We have somebody in the truck providing some resistance on the brake pedal. We don't wanna do too much where it's skidding the tires or anything, but we just want that resistance so that we put a good amount of weight onto this rope. So make sure all your rigging is rated for the proper weight. Make sure everything's out of the way so you don't have any obstructions that you're gonna be dragging towards. And we're using wireless, it's a lifesaver. We just wanna watch the rope as it winds up to make sure everything goes on evenly. But we'll go ahead and start rolling this guy up. All right, so once you get the cable rolled all the way up in there, obviously watch your fingers, don't get anything jammed up in there, but make sure that you get your hook or your flat link really tight up against that fair lead, because you don't want that kind of laying around. That could be a hazard on the roadway. Make sure you crank that puppy tight up against that fair lead. You'll be good to go. All right, guys, that sums up our install tutorial of the Chevy Colorado ZR2 Covert front bumper. Thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe. If you've got any questions, leave us a comment below.